Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
When I'm looking to buy a new rental property, I'm really just looking for a base hit. I want something that's going to be pretty easy to manage, something that's going to make me some money, and something that's going to overall be a pretty good experience. But what's great about rental properties is you never know when you're going to hit that grand slam, when you're going to find that one deal that really changes your entire life. And Tom, it sounds like you found that deal when you were pretty new to investing.
Yeah, up until that point, and I guess I was about a year into my investing career where I was focusing on single family homes, fix and flips, and wholesaling. And I had purchased one or two to buy and hold. And then I came across a deal. I was approached by a wholesaler I had met in one of the local RIAs with a deal for 75 units in the Charleston area. He actually was not looking for a buyer. He was looking for somebody to help him fund it. But I ended up buying the package. It was a little scary going from two single family homes to 75 units with a big mix of 12 plexes, 10 plexes, 4 plexes, triplexes, and duplexes. I didn't have a lot of time, so it was a leap of faith, but I spoke to people around me in the business, people who had mentored me at Fortune Builders, and they all thought I should give it a shot, and that's what I did.
That's really a huge change to go from managing 2 doors to managing 77 doors overnight is kind of mind-boggling. And on the show today, we're going to figure out how Tom did it, how he was able to take on so many properties, how he financed the deal, and see how everything has worked out for him. Joining us on the show today from Charleston, South Carolina is Tom Merrifield. We'll take a real quick break. We'll thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll jump right into the interview. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Tom, before you started investing, you had a corporate job and you had an interest in real estate. How did you learn enough to get started and to buy your first property?
I knew real estate was a good place to invest. I did not necessarily want to become a real estate agent. And I then heard over the radio an ad to attend a free real estate investment meeting. My wife and I went there. This led to another 3-day long weekend meeting. And after those 3 days, I decided it would be worth my while to buy in, to have a mentoring package to learn how to fix and flip properly. This was with a group called Fortune Builders. Than Merrill is the main guy running that. These are a group of guys who had been fixing and flipping houses for 14 years. They also had a TV show, Flip This House, I believe it was called, CT Homes. And they basically had built up a package of information which you would, in online training as well as real seminars, face-to-face meetings over 2 or 3 days with the experts, learn how to implement what you needed to do to be able to find, purchase, renovate, and sell homes, or wholesale them, as the case may be.
Now, obviously, everything's worked out. I mean, you've become a successful investor, but do you feel like you really needed that course, or do you feel like you maybe just overpaid for education that you probably could have figured out on your own?
No, I think that course paid for itself in the first 2 flips. That course gave me the self-confidence to get outside my comfort zone and start talking to sellers, talking to brokers, and getting some deal flow going. I don't think I would have ever been as successful had I not done the group and I had just tried to find everything out online. The information's there, yeah, but
Yeah.
to distill that into a form that where you experience teachable moments and you understand from the people who have made the mistakes for you is very important and saves a lot of time. I'd
Sure.
probably be still at 3 or 4 houses
Sure. Okay.
had I not done the training.
All right. So you did the training, you get started. And so tell me about the first property you bought.
Yeah, I think it was probably my fourth or fifth flip that I ended up deciding to just keep. I had I had not really looked into rentals at that time point, but had some discussions with the property manager who told me, what do you think I could get for rent on it? I also had some other projects coming online where I needed the cash. Um, I could have used the cash to purchase another property rather than do a big renovation on a flip. So I decided to keep that property, do a minimal renovation, cosmetic, and get a tenant in there, and it worked out great. I think I bought it for $39,000 and rented it out for about $1,100 a month.
That's great. Okay. So then you bought that property, then you got your second property, and then you came across the package of 75 units. So how did that come about? Like how did you find that deal?
So I had been visiting the local RIA meetings, and there was kind of a breakout group that met Monday mornings um, at a Denny's, and where we just talked about deals. And I was approached by somebody or I was called after the meeting by somebody I'd met there. They were actually not looking to sell the deal; they were trying to find somebody to co-finance the deal. But the way it ended up is his partner sold me the deal. I It was 75 units, an 80-year-old man who had built them up over years here in North Charleston. I think he had owned them probably for 30 years. He was retired Navy and just stepped into people's mortgages and bought cheap properties kind of in the hood. And he wasn't physically able to continue working on these and renovating. In fact, of these 75 units, only about 40 were livable when I purchased them.
That seems like you're kind of like jumping like 20 steps ahead from going from two single families to this package where it seems like you have a lot of work ahead of you. Did it feel like a big jump? Like, were you nervous to get into such a big deal?
Totally. Yeah, I was I
Yeah.
was nervous. I was scared. I had a lot of sleepless nights during the due diligence period, but I'm such that when I put thought into something, when I finally make the decision, and that decision comes after speaking to other experts, after making sure my wife's on board, um, after a lot of thought, then I never go back. Then I'm all in and feel confident in what I'm doing. And my management experience in the pharmaceutical industry did help me dealing with large budgets and prioritizing and things like that. So yes, I bought it all, but I only worked on pieces of it at a time.
Right. Okay. So how did that work? Like, how do you even like? I'm just picturing myself if
Yeah.
I walked into that package where you have all these units that aren't livable, and maybe you have other tenant problems going on. Like, how did you know where to start?
Well, you can plan where to start, but with that many units in the hood, reality kind of takes over and drives you. Um, so you may be saying, "Oh, I want to renovate this apartment building numbers B, C, and D," but then across the street, if a fire starts or if the cops are showing up to stop something going on, your priorities change quickly.
Right.
And I think that the single biggest thing that completely changed my plan, where I had to throw out the window what my prioritization 1, prioritization 2, prioritization 3 over the next 2 years would be, was when I got a letter from the railroad saying that they're going to be expanding the naval base shipyard, and they're going to take a third of my properties in the process.
Wow.
That, of course, was scary at first. I had no experience with eminent domain, nor did anybody else that I had worked with. But I was able to find an attorney who was specialized in that. And after speaking to other investors, I saw it as an opportunity rather than as a threat. And it took 2 years, but ended up making more money on those 25 properties that I had that were liberated from me than I had paid for all 75.
Wow. Okay. So you, out of the 75 units, you lost 25 of them.
Yeah, a third, yeah.
But the 50 that you had left, you basically got paid for by selling off those 25.
Correct.
That is incredible. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So now you've got almost a free and clear portfolio. Now, I mean, obviously you've got a lot of rehab work ahead of you. Actually, I guess like this was going on over 2 years. So were you rehabbing a lot of the units as this was going on?
Yeah. So that became my strategic focus then. When I knew which of the properties they were going to take, I focused all my renovation efforts on those and getting butts and seats, because you on properties like these where the land is basically worthless, and the properties which were built in the 50s, 60s, these are C-class or lower properties themselves, have virtually no value. Like the land value on one of my 12 plexes was, I think, $10,000, and the property value was only like $60,000. So I would have got $70,000 for a 10-plex had it just been on pure value. But if the properties are generating income, then they have to do an income-based calculation, and that's the road I took.
Okay, so you had to fix the properties up to be able to get more money for them.
Fix properties up and put tenants in place so that you're actually generating income. That's the only way to get the value out of it then.
Wow.
When eminent domain takes the property.
Yeah, that's really crazy to think that you're fixing up properties that you're going to lose. Like, did that drive you crazy at all?
It did, and you know, there were some losses. I had agreed with them, for example, because these were all units that I had put a new appliances in. I had put new window air conditioners or wall air conditioners in, and I had agreed with them that I would be able to take all of these out, at which time they condemned the property. Well, guess what? They forgot to inform me, and basically they all got looted and stolen. But I made them pay for it on the back end. Then when we finally sealed the deal, I think they added $30,000 to the check.
Wow.
To compensate me for that. It's a totally different way of thinking, and different than anything I had learned too.
Yeah.
But it also made me change how I renovated. I had apartment buildings where at a previous time they had been all 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom units, and the previous owner had changed them into 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom units, like flats on a floor. And I switched them all back to 1-1 at a higher cost, because I know I would be able to generate more income. And then that's what Section 8 and the VA and stuff were looking more than anything for, 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment. So you have to find out about what the market needs at the same time.
Yeah. Now, I don't have any personal experience with like these. Basically, it's like a D-class property. It sounds like. So I've never personally owned any D-class properties, but from the people on the podcast that we've talked to that kind of specialize in that market, it seems that you've got to really you really need like a specialized skill set to manage these kind of tenants and to deal with the drama that goes along with it and the repairs. So, did you figure out on your own how to manage this, or did you bring in a manager to help you?
Well, I did bring in a property manager who was just starting his business out. So he was hungry. I was hungry. So I was by far his largest investor client with all these units. And I spent probably 4 days a week in the hood the first 6 months that I owned these properties. So it was a mixture of getting a property manager, of course, to deal with the daily drama, but I got to know a lot of these tenants personally, and I would put them to work too for $10 an hour, helping me paint, helping me clean up trash, helping me take stuff to the dump, um, to kind of get a little buy-in. And then I had automatically built in people who were looking out for my stuff. You know,
Okay.
we had a supply building there. I had a trailer hooked up to it. So I bought them lawnmowers and stuff, and they helped me take care of things.
That's
And they
smart.
saw I'm not here
Yeah.
just to raise the rents and throw them out on the street, but want to integrate them into it. That was helpful.
Right.
That didn't hold on for probably longer than 2 years because I pulled back from. I didn't want to spend all my time in the hood, and I had moved on to other properties as well. But yeah, you need to know who to pick.
How did it work with getting paid? Like, what were you getting? It's like one thing to get a tenant in there; it's another thing to get a tenant that's gonna stay and is gonna pay. So, did you have a lot of problems with turnovers and non-payment?
Yes, and I still do. That is just part and parcel for these kind of war zone properties that you're going to have a higher fluctuation, you're going to have a higher delinquency rate. I mitigate that to some extent by working with Section 8, the VA, and other housing companies to try and keep that to a minimum. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about what comes out at the end. Yeah, your expense rate is going to be relatively high on these properties, but your purchase price is relatively low.
Right.
And so it's all about the cap rate you want to be able to achieve at the end of the day. And I know I would have a more passive income if I invested in B or A class properties, but I would probably only own 8 or 10 instead of
Right.
90 as well.
Right. So, how does it work? Or I guess like how has it worked out? Because you've owned these properties now for a while. How many years has it been?
The package that I purchased, I've now owned for 6 years.
So how has it worked out? Like, how has it been profitable?
Oh yes,
All
yeah,
right. So after everything, even dealing with more turnover and
yeah.
non-payment, you're glad you bought it.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Like I mean, the value. I mean, you have to imagine. I bought 75 units for $750,000.
Yeah.
Um, I've I last year I sold 15 of them for over $1 million.
You sold
I
15 of the 75 for $1
Yeah.
million. Wow. Wow, that's
Um,
incredible.
eminent domain. The railroad took 25 of them for $950,000.
Yeah.
So I've still got 30 left, and they're probably worth $100,000 a door, though. So there's still 3 million um, in equity there.
Right.
They generate um, they generate almost $30,000 a month.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah,
and
so
it ends up being net about 15,000 a month.
yeah, it's made you millions of dollars. You've got
Yeah.
really good cash flow. Yeah, it sounds like it's really worked out. And so, going forward, the other properties that you've bought since then, have you
Mhm.
really focused on the D class properties?
Um, well, not all of them are D class. Some are C class, and
Okay.
one's even B class, I'd like to say I am trying to get into a better class of property, so that there is less drama, and that's especially important for me for properties that are further away and not close to home. But it's really difficult when you're going out there and looking to buy, and you're seeing your purchase price is going to be 2 or 3 times as high a door to get into a B class property than into a C or D class property. It's a bitter pill to swallow. It makes you think about, well, maybe I just need to do the extra work and get a better payoff.
In addition to owning rental properties, Tom is also a full-time realtor. He works with a lot of investors. And if you're interested in connecting with Tom, learning more about Charleston, or you want to talk to him about investing there, he would be happy to talk to you. I've got his contact information on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 374. I just want to give you an update on a bonus episode. I know we've talked about this a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, but I've recorded a phone call between Chaley Ridge and an investor. The investor wants to talk to Chaley to kind of come up with a strategy on how she can grow her rental income. And I want to let you know that's going to be coming out next week. I'm shooting for next Thursday, so keep an eye out for that. And thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'll be back with a new episode next Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.